Welcome to the roller coaster live here on YouTube today. Joining me, as she does every Tuesday, is Holly Boxenhorn. Hey, Holly, how's it going today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So we were chit-chatting a bit by text about today's show, and one of the things we wanted to dive into was how all of our relationships seem to come into play at midlife, like everything. Everything seems to come into play when it comes, when we're sort of hitting midlife, and especially relationships, our relationships with ourselves, with our family members, with friends, everything seems to go into a state of flux, I found. And I think, if I sort of dive into that a bit, I think it's when you start becoming more self-assured who you are, what you are and are not willing to accept into your life anymore. I think that's when we start to look around at the people in our lives and we have to start to make these decisions.
I think it's a number of factors, but I think you're right. I think, we're less tolerant of, spending our time with anyone who zaps it. But I think like all our relationships are changing up. Like if we're parents, we're starting to empty nest. So that's shifting and changing. And then maybe we're getting reunited with our husbands, or maybe we're contemplating divorce. But for some reason, that is a huge topic of conversation about like cleaning house, like the feeling like there are just some relationships that just there's nothing drawing each other together anymore. And I think because our roles are even shifting up, what was once in place, like kids things typically brought us together, is also changing. So it's a couple of forces that come into play, but I think the number one that you mentioned is that we're less tolerant of the feeling of like, why am I walking away feeling kind of gross after I just got together with this person, and wanting more for ourselves at this point.
Yeah, I think one of the things that sticks out that I noticed were the friendships where the other person always seemed to take, where when you get together, they do 90% of the talking, they do the 90% of needing and seeking help and support. And you help them because that's what you always do. And then a couple hours later after you part ways, you're like, well, wait a second, I didn't have a chance to share my thoughts or my feelings or where I was looking for help. So those can be really tricky, because how do you break up with a friend?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of techniques that I speak about with my clients when things are shifting and changing, but it's funny that you bring up that factor in particular, because I can never say the word, but in a mutual I cannot.
No, I can't say it. No. No, I can say it in my head. I can't say it out loud. No.
Well, we'll say mutual connection.
Everyone knows what we're trying to say.
Isn't that horrible? So as I was, contemplating a couple of things to bring to our conversation, I picked up something that I had done a long time ago, the 13 characteristics of good quality relationships. And on it is, I'm going to try to say this word, reciprocity. Oh my God.
That was close. I think that was pretty damn close.
That's too funny. That is a tough word to say.
It is. Another one I can't say?
What?
Familiarity.
I could say familiarity. It's tough. I can say that one. Reciprocity. I can't say it. Why can't we say it? Anyway, so it's one that's on the top 13 of the, good characteristics, like of a relationship. I'll name a couple of the other ones. And a lot of the time I'll share this with my clients. So they almost have a checklist, so that when they're referencing relationships, do I have this with that? Do I have, that with it? Now, listen, you're never going to have, 100%. It's just, we're not perfect, nor would a friend or a partner be perfect either. But we want to, have at least our non-negotiables out of this, top 13, I think, at the very least. So there's trust, there's communication, appreciation, growth-oriented, respectful, reciprocity, patience, empathy, affection, interest, flexibility, healthy conflict resolution, individuality and boundaries, and openness and honesty. So, I share them, and a lot of my clients will write them down. And it's almost like a reference points to say, like, do I have this with this individual? What am I lacking? What might need to be worked on? Or maybe not necessarily. It doesn't have to always be worked upon. We can have a relationship, and have a commonality that binds us together, but it doesn't have to be, our ideal, soulmate or BBF, that kind of thing. But I do think that you should have your non-negotiables. I do think this list, you should definitely say, like, out of 3 or 4 of these, like, I need at least this to be in a relationship where I'm going to go out of my way to cultivate and foster something deeper and richer. I do. I think at the minimum, you need to have at least 3 to 4 non-negotiables on this list. And it's personal for everybody, what that might be. For me, individuality and boundaries is really huge. Of course, the word that we cannot say, it's really sad. Why can't I say the word? And
I can't say it either. What's called the R word.
That you can't say the word either.
Nope, I can't even.
But that respectful is huge for me, and communication. I just think, but of course, all these are great. I want them all.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's gonna be pretty tough to find somebody that ticks all the boxes, but also you have to shine the light on yourself.
Of course.
Are you ticking all of those boxes? Are you sort of meeting those expectations?
Exactly.
But I think it also comes down to, we all have different, I'm going to say, types of friends, especially if we're mothers, we had the types of friends that were, one of my kids played hockey. Right. So you sort of had like the moms you chatted with at hockey practice, and you had moms you chatted with because your kids were friends at school, and that type of thing. Or you have, if you're working in an office, you have, your office buddies, that type of thing.
Right.
And they're all relationships, and there's all elements of friendship. But I think when you get down to those ones that are sort of, they've been there for years.
Yeah.
And, you sort of get together and you plan things, or you hang out, or they're, continuously in contact with you. I think those are really the ones that you have to decide, are they working for you or aren't they? And I've had both.
Yeah,
I had to look at.
And I have another little analogy that I also share with my clients that's helpful in this kind of conversation. Because I think, maybe not particularly. I mean, everyone goes through hardships and struggles and challenges all times of their lives. But what I'll get from a lot of clients who might be going through divorce, or might have lost their husband, or maybe an ill child, or they're ill, or they're sick, it gets into a position where, how much do I want to share of myself and what's going on? And I think you're right. We have these subgroups of relationships. But I tell my clients, if you could just maybe use this analogy, we have 3 types of friends. We have those friends that we keep in the kitchen, which those are our nearest and dearest, and our hearts are wide open for them, and we can share mostly anything with them. Then we have the people that we have friendships with that are out on the front step, that if cultivated and fostered, maybe they might be people in my kitchen, but I don't know them that well, so there's maybe so much I share with them. And then there are people that we keep out on the street. And that doesn't mean that like we shut the door to them, but we know that, they're, hi, goodbye, with their acquaintances. We're not going to share our deepest, intimacies and thoughts with them. And they might be those who are draining us, or starting to drain us, where we need to put a lot of boundaries out there.
Yeah, the energy vampires, the ones that you walk away that you're like, you're just going to say, like, what the just happened there? Like, you just feel like, and I've been in those situations where you just walk away and you're like, I need a nap.
Right. Well, and they don't even have to be someone that dear to you. It could be an acquaintance of someone that you might have known through the community, and then you bump into them, and they're like they're just filled of like some kind of vibe that just makes you feel like, oh, that was just a very weird encounter. And that's why having this analogy, then we move on. It's like, oh, well, that person's out on the street anyway. Like, so I'm not going to sweat it, rather than get into a whole head game of, oh, what was that all about? Oh, she was weird. What was going on? If we have our 3 classifications, then we know where to invest our blood, sweat, and tears, so to say, where we're going to really put ourselves out and give it our energy if it's warranted. So I think just having that reference point is just a great way of kind of just either saying, in it, and this is worth a hard conversation, or this is worth going out of my way for this individual, or, I'm not so sure, and why should I sweat it, in that kind of vein.
Yeah, and there's always sort of that natural ebb and flow of friendships. And for me, one of the things, I'm just not a person that's in contact constantly with people. I'm just not.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, growing up, that's not who I was. I'd hang out with my friends all day at school, and then we'd come home and you still talk for hours on the phone.
Right.
It was obviously long before social media and cell phones and stuff like that, but we would still have tons to talk about.
Yeah.
But now I think I've gone more introvert, and I sort of stick to myself more. So for me, I kind of need those friends that are okay, that, if we don't hear from each other for several days or a week, but when we do talk, you get on like a house on fire. And I do have a friend like that.
Well, then for you, probably, individuality and boundaries would be very important in your relationships. And, I'm similar. I call myself a social introvert. I like people. I really do. Obviously, because of what I do for a living, I enjoy getting to know people, but I'm really good by myself. I'm really comfortable with that piece. I also, don't, and that's important to know who you are. So you know who you gravitate towards. Like, I don't love to be in a big party. I'd rather small, intimate gatherings. So I also have gotten better at what I'm going to say yes and no to. I'm not, I hate getting dressed up. I hate getting physically dressed up, putting on makeup and shoes. I have horrible feet. I can't go in heels, anything only with a wedge. I hate getting dressed up. I have to be comfortable. So I like, gatherings, small gatherings. Knowing who you are is also going to be important with how you're going to cultivate relationships and owning it. Like, I think back in the day, I was uncomfortable with being a social introvert. Like, I felt like I had to get out more. I had friends who would stay out till 2:00 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm out of here at like 11:30. I was
that's late. Try like 10.
In college, I was never that girl.
Yeah.
So, but I felt like that was something I had to keep up with. And clearly, like, now I don't. And now it's almost comical with my dear friends. Like, if they keep on going, I'm like, I'm out, guys. I'll see you. Been great. Like, and they know it, because I just have my limit and my threshold, and I don't need to be there, hours and hours and hours. I have to accept that about myself. It's just not my cup of tea. So knowing that about yourself is going to be huge in cultivating the right relationships with yourself. Or yourself.
And for me, and a lot of people are going to consider this odd, but the person that I spend the most time with, that I enjoy spending the most time with, is my husband.
Well, why is that odd?
Well, I don't know. Some people just are like, people have made comments about, spending a lot of time together, or I don't know. But it's like, we both work from home. We're always together, and it's, nobody knows me better. Except for myself. And I thought it was just me. I thought, okay, well, maybe we're a bit weird that we're perfectly okay spending our time with each other, and, not really having many friends outside of that. And, other sort of acquaintances have made comments, and I thought, well, maybe we're the weird ones here. And I still thought, well, isn't it a good thing that you're best friends with your husband? I mean, you are like married.
I think that's something to envy. And I mean, how wonderful is that? The person who's living in your home 24/7 is the one you want to spend, the most amount of time with. Fortunately, I'm in a similar situation. I do need my individuality and my boundaries. Like I work from home. So, and my husband sometimes works from home. And when he does, it's like kind of like a fly. I'm like,
He's
oh,
in your space. Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, I need to focus here. We're not here for conversation because he's not really thinking I'm working. He's
Gotcha.
thinking he's working and he's actually at home. But he's my favorite person. I love spending time with him. I love having conversation with him. But we are or independent people in the sense that he has his little group of friends, I might have mine. I have no problem him going and hanging with them and me, but we're each other's priority. Like he wouldn't ever necessarily say unless, hey, we got plans on Friday night. If not, Phil is asking me to get together. You're okay with that? Yeah, cool, no problem. But in that sense, I think it's a beautiful thing to have your partner as your favorite person. I would have to say, I mean, anyone who casts judgment on anyone is usually there's an there's something going on there. Because I mean, who is anyone to really judge? I mean, that's your husband. That's a wonderful thing that you enjoy spending time with him. And that is I think it's a rarity, to be honest with you, Lucie. It's a rarity. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just who we are. I don't know.
And I think it's great, but that's beautiful. That's a great thing. It is, though, I think rare, because I think when people who spend years and years together, either they grow apart or they grow together. And let's face it, divorce the rate is really high, and people,
yeah. And I mean, that's not to say that we haven't had our problems.
Of course.
I mean, yeah, he can still annoy the shit out of me sometimes, and I'm sure I do that to him. And there's still the times where, the rare occasion when you get the house to yourself.
Right.
And you're just like, I'm just going to be and do my own thing. And you're really not doing anything different, but you're just sort of in your own space.
Totally.
And I think, whether you have, a slew of friends, I think ultimately, we do have to become comfortable with being with ourselves. And because really the person we spend the most time with is yourself. Like I don't know if it was a therapist or a life coach, basically asked this question: name your 5 closest friends. And so, mentally name your 5 closest friends. And then they sort of ask, where were you on that list?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's something that we often forget is, we are our own best friend. And because we spend the most time with ourselves.
We'd like to think we're our own best friends. And that is definitely a topic of conversation as far as cultivating self-love and self-acceptance and self-compassion. And that is, yes, relationship with ourselves is huge. And you made a good reference to it. And I think we should definitely dive into that maybe next live, because that's like a big piece in itself. But I love that you took the list that I shared with you and you had said, well, where do you fall on it?
Yeah.
And where does someone else fall on it? Because I think that's really important that, if we want to draw in that, we have to then give that, right? Energy attracts like energy. So I think that was a really important point as far as, if you want to build great relationships, then you too want to take a look at this list and check those boxes as well.
Yeah. And I think you have to have your own list of, what expectations you're willing to have on a friendship.
Yeah.
Because I mean, one thing I run into all the time, it's not a friend, it's my mother. And her expectations just don't align with who I am.
Yeah.
Like she'll call and she'll say, oh, she'll call in the middle of the workday. I'm calling for a chat. Give me a call when you get a chance. And it's like, if I don't have a chance for, 4 or 5 days to call you, because I've got a lot going on, she'll get mad I didn't call her back. And I'm like, well, A, you called day, and B, you said to call me when I had a chance. Like if you had said, holy shit, so-and-so's dead, call me.
Right.
I would have dropped everything and go.
Right. If it's an emergency, it's something urgent. I need to speak
but
to
you. It's that, and I keep sort of saying, that's your expectation. It's not mine. That's not who I am. Don't expect it from me. You're not going to get it.
I think the fact that you're saying that is big. I think And that's where like open communication comes into, because if you don't articulate what is going on or what you would like to experience in the relationship, then shame on you. It's like the typical thing. I mean, I hear this a lot. Like, let's say it's like Mother's Day, and I hear it all the time. Mother's Day never goes the way I want it to go. So I'm like, so then why don't you plan your own Mother's Day and give everyone a heads up of maybe some expectations that you would like? Then at that point, if they fail or it doesn't come to fruition, then I can understand being disappointed. But if you don't tell someone, what you would like within a relationship, how can they, they're not in your head. They're not you. They're coming from their own experience. And I think, that women, or maybe not even women, I would think, unfortunately, this isn't really taught in high school 101, but, you're supposed to, people are supposed to know. Like they're supposed to know, like what's, they say, well, why should I tell someone I want flowers? Then what's the point? Well, I'm not saying that you tell them to get your flowers and that day they buy you the flowers, but you want to open up a dialogue saying, I would love, flowers occasionally, just, that's kind of nice. Or I would just love, sitting outside in the backyard and, just chatting, or whatever it is that you really want, then shame on you, and I get, the feeling of frustration when our partners or our friends aren't on the same page, but, we can't expect them to if, they don't know where you're at and what you're seeking. So we have to share that.
And there's also something else we fall into, and that's martyrdom, where we are like, oh, no, don't make a big deal. Don't make a big fuss. And then you're pissed off because they didn't. Well, you told them not to.
Yep.
So I think we do have to have our own check and balance that, like you said, it's communicating what we want is it if somebody brings something up, is you do actually have to articulate what you want.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're gaslighting them by saying, no, I'm good. Like, don't make a big fuss.
Right.
Or, you're setting them up to fail.
Exactly.
And it's not fair.
No, it isn't fair. And again, and I love this, this reference because of like, making sure you two are checking the boxes to these things, because it really does help me then step back and reflect in any relationship that I'm in, to stop and say, where is it that maybe I might be contributing to some kind of, resistance or conflict or something that might not be going on? Where might I be also, contributing to this? Because, I think we often, really view and point fingers, or we don't share what we're feeling. And then we wind up not having a relationship that can be very successful, because all relationships take work. They all take work. If you want a relationship, even, your good old dear friend, a peer relationship, you got to pick up the phone and call or text and say, how you doing? And it takes that energy to do that. So I think that it's important to have that reference point for yourself. Do unto others as you want done unto your, to you, is the expression. And then from there, start shifting around and deciding, who is it that I really want to welcome and surround myself with? Because I do think that, listen, research is there, Lucie. I mean, the number one factor in someone's happiness and wellness is their social connections.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the truth. I'm not talking about, quantity. I'm talking about quality. And that is the number. I mean, studies have been done over and over again. Those people who live happier, longer lives have connections with people in their lives that are quality, and that, and mutual. So it's a fact. Even as a social introvert, I know that it is so utterly important for me to get the date on the calendar, to go out to dinner with my friend, the coffee date in the middle of the afternoon, to connect with someone. These things, even though they take effort, fill me up in the end, and then they make me show up better as a human being. Yeah.
Well, if anybody wants to argue it, all they have to do is look at what happened, during the C word events.
Yeah.
I mean, and I still think that people aren't making those connections because we're still seeing mental illness at an all-time high. We're still seeing high suicide rates and these things. And it's all that downfall because things built up
Yeah.
And that there are a lot of people that just couldn't readapt to life after.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other part of it is that, I think, isolation and loneliness is definitely on the rise more than ever. And it's particularly something that women in midlife have to experience, because that roadmap that we had kind of comes to a grinding halt. And so now it's like, where, these natural ways of getting relationships, maybe through our work or through our children or through the community, they're not as much there for us. And so we have to really go out of our way to cultivate it. And also, again, our preferences are shifting with those people we want to surround ourselves with. But it is such a huge factor in our well-being is quality connections with people, not quantity, but quality.
Yeah, you still need to have your tribe, whatever that consists
Yep.
of. And I know a lot of people will sit there and say that it has to be in person, that online friendships don't count and stuff like that. I do disagree with that, because, one of my good friends lives out west. I maybe see her once a year. Now, when we get together, watch out.
Yeah.
Shit's gonna happen. But most of the year, I mean, it could go 2 weeks before we don't speak to each other on, mainly on text. We may only FaceTime every month or so.
Yep.
But when we're together and we're fully present, when those times happen. So I think, the definition around what a friendship is and what that looks like, I think that does depend on the person. Some people don't do very well sitting behind a screen all the time and never really connecting with the outside world. Whereas other people, they're perfectly content with that. And again, that comes down to evaluating the types of friendships you have and what you're looking for from them.
I agree. And I think it's like you said, you have this dear relationship with that person, but I'm sure that person is the person who would be in your kitchen, so to say, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So, that and how many people are really in our kitchen? You're lucky if you have, I'm going to say 5, that would be a lot. Kitchen people are, those people who, I can honestly identify outside of my husband, as far as peers, I have 3 people that I would honestly have in my kitchen. I got a nice amount out of my, stoop that if I cultivated it more, probably, and I love hanging out with them. They're fun, but genuinely 3 people in my kitchen. That is really it. Who are those kind of people? And those are my friends, not my family outside of my husband. I mean, I love my mom and I love my sisters, and I actually have a great extended family, but
some of those people are are at the end of the driveway.
Yeah, and that's okay. And I'm sure they would say the same thing for me as well, but that's all good. But I think it's even having this understanding, so we don't take up too much time analyzing it. I think that's
you can get caught in the drama of things, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's I hear that from women, is that there's still this level of what they should or shouldn't be doing, and I'm like, how does this person even, work into your life at this point? Does it even make sense for you? And really understanding the difference between, the people in your kitchen, your stoop, and and the street really helps to kind of just get away from all that stupid mind banter that we do on ourselves. Like, this one doesn't like me. Oh, did I insult that person? Or should I do this? Or should I do that? And maybe I should go out of my way. And so I think that helps, just kind of let's just
like that.
Clean the house.
Kitchen, porch, street.
Yeah.
Or driveway. We'll say driveway.
Because, and you know what? And when we're in a bind, it's so funny because we'll bump into maybe an old acquaintance and you start to catch up. And I'll have clients say to me, it's funny, I bumped into this person and I almost started going into all these particular personal details. And I thought to myself, no, don't do this, because you're going to wind up regretting it. You haven't really spoken to that person, and you're not going to get what you want out of the relationship. And it's putting them in, so they knew right away, oh, that's a street person. I'm not going to go there. I'm not even going to go there. So, I think it's something to think about. And then there were some relationships that, there are not like that drain us, but we can't necessarily just get rid of them. And most of them are family. There might be friends who have become, that way that we need to start pacing ourselves back. But, I also tell women that there's ways of kind of, experiencing the relationships, even if they're not ideal for you. You don't want to be victim to them any longer. And if you're not ready to leave them either, then possibly changing your perspective on the relationship is where you need to go. So instead of rather trying so hard to change the relationship that's not going anywhere, it might be like, well, maybe this friend's only for shits and giggles. Like literally, go out, we keep it light. I don't even go to the depths with it because I know I'm going to kind of walk away feeling yucky. And the same thing might be for a family member, understanding we can change the perspective, or there might be a commonality, work. It might be, children still that, can bring someone together for that reason. But shifting our perspective on it allows us to still be with it. Because then we're, not feeling victimized by it. And we're identifying saying, okay, so this is how, this is going to show up in my life.
Yeah. And in the same way that you look at your friends, whether they're kitchen, porch, or driveway, you're still going to have that within your family.
Yes.
Although, depending on your family, you may have more family members in the kitchen, or you may have more family members at the driveway.
Right.
It's all okay. It's how you choose to look at it. It's your choice. It's 100% your choice, how you choose to look at it and I think once you, as you said, once you change the way you're looking at it, then you're probably not going to react the same way to some of the drama and the bullshit.
Yep. 100%, because you could go back and forth. We don't want to be the victim here, but if you're not willing to, leave the relationship, and sometimes we can't, then we need to then, like I said, change our perspective and put boundaries on that relationship, so there's, or buffers. Be sure that there are several people in the room. You wouldn't necessarily do a one-on-one with that person. You want buffers in the room. There's a lot of ways we can manage those kind of draining relationships. Start spending less time with that individual. And, what other ways can we vocalize where we're at without creating this whole big, because some people, is it make sense to even have that hard conversation with? Can they absorb it? Like my mother, well, not my mother now could not, has Alzheimer's, but when she didn't have the Alzheimer's and she was in her 70s, trying to get her to, understand where she was, infuriating me really wasn't going to go anywhere because she was 70 something and that wasn't going to change. And the dynamic was there. So then it was up to me to determine then how I'm going to interact with her at that point, and then get into as much of a Zen place as one could be, that when you enter that kind of relationship that's going to be triggering, you're going to be thinking Zen. I'm thinking Zen. I can do this for at least the half an hour or the hour or whatever it might be.
But, you brought up a good point there when it comes to triggering, is sometimes we're triggered because we're doing something. And, especially when it comes to that mother-daughter relationship is, you have to look, am I being triggered because I'm expecting the other person to be something that they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And then because they're not behaving the way we're expecting, then we get triggered.
You have to shine the mirror.
You've just got to sort of look at it. This is the way it is. You're, like you said, you're not going to change it. Just change how you react to it and stop giving a shit sometimes.
And relationships are hard, the thing about midlife is that when you do have relationships that have lasted long, like you have tried and true dear friends, like you've been through a lot with them, been through many years, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's pretty amazing. And I talked about this with my children all the time, whether it's a romantic relationship or it be friends, and they, feel disappointed. I said, hey guys, like this is what relationships are. There is going to be a level of vulnerability. You need to get to know someone, see them in all their glory, and when, the tough times come is where you really see, whether or not you can show up for each other. That's where you really see it. So, I think that that's where there is a bit of an advantage in midlife, because we do know who we are much better than ever, who we can blend with more. Like, I really can't be with anyone who's too, pretentious. Like, I like people who just keep it very, very real, that whole glossing over everything is great, everything is rosy. Again, I don't expect you to be like, my life sucks. I don't want to hear that either. But I like that whole, I don't know, that world of, everything's great, everything's fantastic. And, there's never any sharing of any challenge. Like, to me, that's hard for me to be in that kind of relationship. That wouldn't work for me, because I need to be in a relationship where I can just show all my warts and calluses and all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess it always comes back to knowing who we are and being able to communicate what it is that we want, and understanding that ultimately the choice is ours.
Yeah. Well, that's what attracts me to people. And that's what attracted me to you, actually, was that, you keep it very real, and I just knew that, like, that was an instant synergy for me, just an instant connection. And I think when one is that way, so much can be built from that, whether it be, pleasure and joy and happiness and laughs, but also hard conversations. Like, we cut to the punch, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this. We can do that because there's now, like, personal, like, we're not worrying about hurting each other's feelings, because we're being honest with each other. And if we were, we would say that. I like that. I like to be able to have that within a relationship.
Well, one day, Holly, we're going to have to get together in person.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind coming to Canada. I wouldn't mind coming to Canada at all.
Well, you're in Jersey, so
no, I'm in New York, Long Island.
You're in Long Island.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I don't know if I've been to Long Island. I don't think I have. I've been to New York City.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we're about like 50 minutes out of the city. I live in a pretty suburban area. So I like to drive to a party, not live in a party. I have two sisters who live in Manhattan. You could never get them out of Manhattan. Me, I live on an acre of land, and we have no street lights at night. It gets really dark.
Yeah, so we kind of live in this, we live in the same type of environment. Okay, we do have kind of shitty street light, like they're highway lights that are out there. I live on an acre.
Yeah, I love it. I love being surrounded by nature. Yep. But I'm not going to lie, quick mile, I can get a Starbucks coffee in a heartbeat. So I do like my luxuries. We have, well, here, I guess it's our equivalent to Dunkin' Donuts, Tim Hortons. Okay.
So we moved into the big times here when they built a Tim Hortons 3 years ago, and that's like maybe 10 minutes away.
Yeah. All right. Maybe I'm not a mile away.
But outside of that, if I want to go to the grocery store, I got 20 minutes that way and 15 minutes that way.
Me too. So but again, all within 10, 15 minutes, and I can have everything around me, but I love being in, the seclusion. Yeah, but my sisters, they love the city. One sister moved out to raise her children in Long Island. Didn't turn out. She went back into the city, wound up raising her children in Manhattan. They love it. They just love it. But that's why, you have to know what your preferences are. Yeah. And that's all a part of building social relationships, that kind of, having similar, like-minded, interests, those kind of things.
Well, I definitely appreciate the friendship we've been able to grow right here online, having these real conversations every week.
Absolutely.
Now, do me a favor, those 13 points, send them to me, because I want to make sure I include them in the notes, because I think that's going to be really helpful for people to, both personally self-reflect and also to make those non-negotiable lists for themselves. So make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have that list from Holly in there. And also I'm going to have our links where you can connect with both myself and Holly to learn about more of what we can do to help you and just find out more about who we are.
Yeah.
So until next time, take care.
So long, everyone.